Hey, what is going on, guys? CodedSteele here, and welcome back to another AppInventor video. The reason I say video on this one is I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with this one. Um, I think this is a little more than just a straight up full-blown tutorial. This is more of like a, kind of almost a full-blown app, but obviously you could take it much further than I actually took it in this thing. You guys can see, I think you guys can derive from the title up here what exactly this app is going to do. It's Siri for Android. What do I mean by Siri for Android? Well, we all know hopefully what Siri is. Siri is something that iPhone has, and they went ahead and basically made it to where, it can answer a certain amount of predetermined responses. What I kind of wanted to do is for you guys who are curious about this type of stuff, and some of you may already know how this stuff works, but I wanted to kind of show you how they turn around and make it to where you can ask Siri a question and Siri always has a response to that certain question. So we all know we've seen that even Samsung, I think Samsung or Android has what's called S voice, and I think Samsung actually has what's called S voice on it. At least on my tablet that I use, it's a Samsung tablet running an Android operating system, and it has what's called S voice, which is almost just like Siri. You can ask it a question and it will answer that question. And if it's incapable of answering that question with a default response, what it'll do is it'll search the web for that answer to that response. So what I did for this is almost the exact same thing. I turned around and I made it to where it could answer a certain list of responses, but eventually it runs into a point to where it's incapable of answering your question, so it just has to search the internet for the answer to your question. So kind of without further ado, let's get started, and I'll show you guys how I went about creating this. So first of all, you can see there's a bunch of non-visible components. You're going to want to drag all this stuff down in here. So speech recognition, text-to-speech, drag those in. They should populate down here. The activity starter should be down in connectivity. You drag that in. Camera was in sensors, I believe. Nope. No. Media. Media, it was right up here. I should have had you grab that. Grab the camera, drag that in. So then you should have all four of these components just sitting down here. Nothing special we really need to do with any of these components. It's just, whatever. Just leave it here and it'll take care of its stuff. So now what we need to do then is, you guys can see I have this button dragged in here. All I just dragged a horizontal arrangement in here. I put a button in, switch it to the button to where the button says ask a question. Switch the width. The width I left automatic. Height I just changed to from automatic to 100 pixels to kind of give it a little bit more of a bulkiness look to it. And then just shaped it as an oval. So to kind of give it a little bit more of that round button feeling instead of that classic button feeling. You guys can see I have a bunch of other components on here, but I don't have them really doing anything. But I have this label that I just dragged in here. I left it up here. I have this yes button and the no button that I dragged up here. I made those not visible by default, but those buttons are essentially right up in this area too. So I just dragged the yes button, and then I think I can make them visible and you guys can see where they're at. Oh, I got to make the arrangement visible. My bad. So you guys can see there they are. If you make the horizontal arrangement visible, that's where I have those positioned at, but I make them not visible by default. And you guys will see why I do that in just a second. So we got all of that stuff dragged in. Horizontal arrangement, we've talked about the button, the label that's added up there. All right, that's everything that we really need to have done to make this app behave the way at least look the way we want it to look. So now we have to cover the behavior. Behavior is a little complicated with this app because there's a lot to it. We want it to turn around and be able to answer a certain amount of questions. So you guys can see this is not like your typical straightforward, simplistic app. I actually have quite a bit of stuff going on here. Let's kind of spread that out a little bit, make it a little nicer. And then do the same thing. So you guys can see I have a lot of stuff going on. I think that's as far as that goes. Yeah. But it's not as bad as it looks, honestly. It looks a lot worse than it actually is. I promise you. it's all going to make sense here in just a second as to what actually needs to be done to get this app to happen. So I feel like, first of all, I should probably demonstrate the app to you guys, because I feel like if I do that, you guys will kind of have an understanding of what exactly this app is doing, and then I can kind of explain how each component is done here, or how each component is, used. Come on, allow. So, yep, we'll go into here, remote control. So if you guys don't know what TeamViewer is, it's the software I use to view my applications. You can use it to view computers and all of that stuff. So very handy piece of software. I recommend you guys check it out. All right, Siri for Android. So usually I don't demo things first, but I feel like if I demo this, you guys can kind of be like, oh wow, that's kind of cool, and then we'll talk about how I did everything. So all right, let's ask it a question. So I have certain questions that I can ask it that it can actually answer, and then others questions it cannot answer at all. So we're going to ask it, why is the sky blue?
The sky is blue because air molecules scatter blue light more than red light.
So it probably, you guys couldn't hear that, but the tablet actually spoke. This is one of those tutorials that's going to be kind of hard. You're just going to have to trust me that it will talk to you if it has speech component, if you have this text-to-speech component put on it. But it basically spoke this phrase up here. And then it also displays it. If you're hard of hearing or something like that, it will also display it for you up here. But it also can do math questions. 10 times 3.
30.
So you guys can see if I said 10 times 3, it'll do that. Let's do 10 divided by 3.
3.33333.
See, so it can even give you decimal answers for stuff. So it can do addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division pretty proficiently. I've got it to the point now to where I had to do a little bit of fine-tuning to it to get it better. But I've got it to the point now to where I haven't had any issues with it since I fine-tuned it. So you guys shouldn't either. And then the final question, I'm just going to say, hi.
How are you?
So it said, how are you back? I have it to where I just say it can say hi or hello, and it will respond, how are you? Obviously, I could have taken it a little bit further and made it to where, you say certain words, it gives you certain responses. You guys obviously could see you could program a pretty silly app like this. But you might be asking yourself, what happens if you ask it a question it doesn't know how to respond to? Well, let's take a look at that. And first of all, before we do that, there's another thing you can do with this. Camera. So you guys can see it pulled the camera component up. And I can see my computer very terribly on the screen. But if I say the word camera, it pulls the camera component up on the actual display. So I could have probably made it to where I actually have a front camera on here too. I could have made it, do both, but I just made it to where it does the back camera by default for this. And then the other thing, last thing I was telling you guys about before is what happens if it doesn't know the answer to a question. Where is the universe? I don't know.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Would you like to search the web for where is the universe?
Now, obviously, that question might not make much sense, but whatever. Let's just, we'll click yes. And you guys can I'm just kind of trying to show you what the point of this is here. It immediately pulls up, it immediately pulls up a bunch of results about where is the universe. So that can be pretty handy too. That's automatically its response. If it doesn't know how to answer your question, it will ask you if you would like to search the web for the answer to that question. So just like, your other, talking components do for you and whatever else. So you guys can see it's a pretty cool app for the most part. But we need to get straight down into how this thing works. And I don't know, this might bleed into another video, but let's get started here. So first of all, in order to get this stuff to work, you have to have these 4 variables that I've declared right here. The question, the list, the index, and the result. The result is simply just the mathematical result. So anytime it does addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, this is where it stores that result and ultimately speaks that result. So index down here, I believed I used that to determine where the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division word is located. And the list, you guys will see here in a second, the question is just simply the question. It's the question you ask the tablet. So what actually happens when you do stuff here, or when you actually click that circular button with the ask a question? Well, what happens is it calls this speech recognizer to get text. So that's pretty simple, straightforward. I just took inside of the speech recognizer, I grabbed this get text function, dragged it in here. So when I push the button, it immediately pops up with that Google window and asks you to say something. As soon as you're done speaking, we actually pull this speech recognizer after getting text. There's a before getting text. I didn't make use of that in this app, but I did make use of this after getting text. And after getting text literally means as soon as that window disappears and you're done talking to the tablet, what do you want me to do? Well, what I want you to do is I want you to get the result of what we just got done saying to you and post it or store it in here, and then call this procedure text to speech. So I made use of a lot of things in this app. Another thing I made use of is something we learned about a long time ago in a really early tutorial. And if you guys don't remember it, I recommend you check out the tutorial again so you can remember exactly how procedures and stuff work. But text to speech, obviously we can see it calls this procedure of stuff right here. So what it's going to do is it's going to search this question and it's going to come up with a response based on what we tell it can respond to. So if you guys don't know this, a speech analyzer cannot take what we say literally. What do I mean by that? What I literally mean by that is that it doesn't look at like if I said, why is the sky blue? Okay, that's a question my app can respond to. It doesn't really look at, it doesn't look at those statements. What it looks at is keywords. And in this case, our app is looking for sky and blue. Now I could say, what is the sky blue? And it would give me this response too, because sky and blue are in there. So if I really wanted to, I could put another and statement and say why has to be one of the keywords sky and blue. So it would actually make it to where it makes sense. But what it actually does is it scans the phrase, looks for keywords, and it has a predetermined response programmed into it for those specific keywords. So if I say, why is the sky blue? It doesn't hear why is the sky blue. It hears why sky blue. And that's what it actually hones in on. And it takes those words, and if it has a pre-programmed response for something like that, it can respond to that. If not, it may search the web for why the sky is blue, just similarly to what we did before. But since our app can literally answer that question by default, I have it programmed here to say it sets the label to the sky is blue because air molecules, blah, 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 a bunch of scientific garbage. And then I have it to where call text to speech. This is literally where it says what is in here. Quick thing to note here. Don't put dots or quotes or dots, exclamation points, blah, blah, blah. Don't put that stuff in here because it will actually say a dot or exclamation point at the end of the thing. So we don't really want it to do that. We want it to just say the words. You can put it in there for punctuation effect. Like up here, I could have put a period here to make it look a little better. That's probably something I will do that. So there's that. But the other thing is obviously, the other thing to make note of, I guess, on this is if this statement does not execute, if sky and blue are not present in what you're saying, it's going to continue down this chain here. So we can see now we're looking for hello or hi. That's where I told you before, if I said hello or hi to this thing, it will respond automatically with how are you. That's just a pre-programmed response that I programmed into the unit. If I didn't say hello or hi, and notice I'm looking for just the words hello or hi. If I say hello, S voice or hello Siri or whatever the heck you want to say, it will not recognize that because it's looking for the specific word hello or hi. And since this is more than that, and it's not just, that's the difference. I should have explained that. This is looking for containing the word sky and containing the word blue. This is looking for it to be exactly equal to hello or exactly equal to hi. No other words, just those. So if I said something else with the word hi, it wouldn't execute this because it's not, just hello or hi. So you do need to keep that in mind. Obviously, you guys could modify it on your own to make it to where, nope, I want it to be just contains like this. Have at it. I put this app here as just kind of a demonstration to show you guys how to do certain things. What you get out of it and what you do with it is ultimately up to you. Modify it, use it however you want to use it. That's why I do this, is I'm trying to just point you guys in the right direction on how to do something and ultimately make it to where you can create your own really cool app. So if this doesn't go, the next thing I say is I'm looking for just the word camera. So I could say anything as long as camera is in the thing, in the phrase, and it doesn't contain sky and blue, because if I said, why is the camera sky blue? It's going to do this first because this contains sky and blue, and it won't execute camera because, sky and blue takes precedence over it. It's the first thing I'm looking at. So you do need to keep that in mind. It's not 100%, foolproof, and it's not going to be able to make sense out of things you do. But obviously, the more programming you did with this application, the smarter it becomes. So the more things you program it to be capable of doing, the smarter it will get. So we've got that. If I say camera, it goes to the camera like we saw before. If I say blah, blah, blah plus something, or blah, blah, blah minus something, or blah, blah, blah times something, or blah, blah, blah divided by something, it's going to call addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division respectively. And if it doesn't contain any of that information that I just went through all the way up here, doesn't answer, if none of these fit the bill, so to speak, it will say, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Would you like to search the web for the question, blah, blah, blah. And then it says, you say, well, yeah, I do want to search the web for that. We'll get to how it searches the web later. Let's go into the analyzing addition and analyzing subtraction and multiplication division. Looks like we'll be able to fit this into one video, which is nice. I'm just going to kind of skim over one of these and then show you guys the other stuff. Analyze addition. This is the procedure that obviously is linked to the analyze addition procedure right over here. So what it does literally is when that gets called, if it's a mathematical state, or if it's a plus adding statement, it will look at this. Now, the reason I have this working this way, plus or plus, is because it seems to me to be almost kind of random. You almost have to speak to these things in a way it's very precise. So if I say plus, sometimes it uses the word plus, or sometimes it uses the plus sign. And it seemed kind of sporadic to me. In order to make it foolproof to where no matter what the heck I said to it, and no matter what the tone I used, it would do an addition statement, this is what I had to do. This will make it to where any addition statement you say, it will be able to analyze. At least from my experience, that's what I saw. So what I do is I look for it to contain either the plus sign or the word plus. And depending on what it does, we run through this series of iterations. Let's just say it uses the plus sign. We split it at the spaces. It's pretty good about making spaces in between the numbers and the actual operator. So what we can do is we split that information. And what that's going to do is that's going to split the number. We don't care whether there's a what, is, or anything like that in front of it. We're not looking at that information, but there is spaces in between that. So what it will do is it's going to go ahead and it's going to say, all right, well, we're going to split at the spaces and turn that into a list. So it'll actually show you, split the text into pieces separated by spaces. So I guess that's not very intuitive, but what that actually does is it turns it into a list. So whenever you use the split at spaces, it turns it into a list with a bunch of indexes. So now we have a list, each word broken apart. We took the sentence, we broke it apart into an array or a list, so to speak. And then now we can analyze that list. And we can say, okay, well, the first thing we want to do is figure out where the plus sign is in relation to that list. Well, As soon as we figure out where the plus sign is at, we assign that to this index variable. Now we have to do something clever with that. We have to say, well, judged on how we know addition and subtraction works, we're always looking at the number before the plus sign and the number after the plus sign to do the addition with, right? So if we know where the plus sign is located in relation to the sentence, and we know that the numbers are all put together as one, or should be one element in the list, we can say, okay, I know where the plus sign's at, so I'm going to subtract one away, and I'm going to say that that must be where the first number is located. And then, in the same respect, I'm going to say, all right, I want to add that here and say that's where the other number is located. So now that I know where, now that I figured out where these two numbers are located, I can perform an addition operation and store that in the result. And then the app will set the label to the result and speak the message to the result. Obviously, there are a few assumptions here. We're assuming that the text-to-speech analytic on your tablet or whatever it is you're using is going to be very, very accurate and put spaces in the right spot and all of that stuff. For the most part, it's been very accurate with me. It's been fairly accurate from what I've tested, and I've refined the app as I've gone along to make it 100% accurate. But that doesn't mean there can't be something that slips through the cracks every now and then. So you do have to watch out for that. This may not work 100% of the time for you. It's all going to depend on your speech analytic on your tablet. But this did work for me, and it works for a variety of statements. And obviously, the other thing I wanted to say, this is based on a fair amount of assumptions. We're assuming that the number is in the right spot and that it breaks it in the correct locations. So there are a fair amount of assumptions that we do have to make mathematically. And when we make those assumptions, we're hoping that the result that comes out is going to make sense. So far, every time it has for me, so hopefully it will for you guys too. What we do for the plus sign is pretty close to the exact same thing, except for we look for the plus sign. We replace the word plus with plus. I just do it to make it the same as what this is going to be up here. So this is the exact same as this, except for the fact that we replace the word, if it puts the word plus in, we replace the word plus with plus, then we split it, blah, 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 do all this other stuff, and then ultimately do our addition right here at the end, and then speak the result. So that's really all there is to each and every single one of these operations are almost done the exact same way. And so far, everything's worked out for me pretty good on all of that. So that's great. Hopefully it works out for you guys too. Analyze subtraction. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because it's the same thing basically as the addition. You're looking for either the minus sign or the word minus. Like I said before, it seems to be use them interchangeably for some reason sometimes. I don't know why it does that, but it does. So you have to ultimately watch out for that. The other thing that you do need to take into account for this, I do need to bring this up, is I have a space here on either side of this minus sign. The reason I do that, if I do not add these spaces, sometimes it will not put a space in there. And if it doesn't, this thing splitting at the spaces, it can't do because there's not a space between the first number and the last number. So I have to put a space there in order for it to realize, oh, hey, I want you to split here and here. So that is something I need to warn you guys about there. Just so you're aware, there is a space there. I did not have to do that for the addition sign, but if it doesn't work for addition, that is something you can try, is putting spaces here, and hopefully that will fix your issue. I will reiterate that again at the end of the video, just so you guys remember that. Same stuff here. If we know where the minus sign is located, we're making an assumption that the number you want to subtract is on the left side, and the other number is on the right side of the subtraction sign. And that obviously, like I said, works out fairly well for me too. I've seen it work out very well. And there we go. Global get result, blah, blah, blah. Minus sign, exact same thing. Whatever. All right. Multiplication, I didn't have to do anything tricky with. Everything just seemed to work out exactly the way I needed to work out. So I don't really know what to say here. I just say the word times, and it just does its thing. I've never had it not do this correctly for me. I don't think I even have spaces on either side of the minus the time sign either. It just is smart enough. Yeah, I didn't even put spaces on either side. Didn't have to. So that worked out fairly well for me. No tricks here. Just follow what I have here, and hopefully it'll work for you too. Obviously a minus operation instead of an addition and subtraction operation. Division. Division again. I had to add spaces just like I did with the minus sign. Division, it seems to like to place the number and the division sign and the other number really close together with no spaces. So that's kind of hard to work with. So what I had to do was I had to say, okay, if there's a division sign that exists, put a space on the left side of it and put a space on the right side of it, and then split it at the spaces so we can get the numbers individually. And then we look at the numbers, we do our mathematical operation with them, and then blah, blah, blah. I did this, same thing, text divided by, blah, blah, blah. I don't think it ever uses the word divided by. I think it always uses the division sign. But I added that in there as just an extra precaution in case, hey, you know, for some reason it decided to use divided by this time. So, you know, we just watch out for that. So I did add that in there as well. I don't think it's ever used this loop ever when I've done the app. So, but there's a first time for everything, obviously. So do watch out for that. Right. But that's it. That's how it can answer any math question that you guys ask it, with the exception of powers and all of that stuff. So yes, if, you could say gotcha there or something to that if, you know, blah, blah, blah. All right. Now, the last thing we need to cover is what if all of that stuff is not true or all of that stuff doesn't have a response for that any particular question that you ask it. How do we turn around and make it to where it can answer any question that you throw at it with the internet? Well, we have to add this stitch of code over here. So this is where the else comes in here. Basically, I give it a default response and say, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Would you like to search the web for? And then use this join statement to obviously join all that stuff together. This is just the label text. This is what it will actually speak. And then I set the horizontal arrangement to true. So basically, the reason I set the horizontal arrangement to true here is to make it to where the yes and no buttons will appear. So I can leave the yes and no buttons visible, but make the horizontal arrangement invisible or visible, depending on the situation. So once that happens, it sets the horizontal arrangement, brings these two buttons up, and then you can now say, yes, I want to. If you click the yes button, it's going to call this line of text. This is kind of the intuitive part. This is actual Java code right here. So when you're designing apps in Java, you have to, these are class objects. Android would be a class. And then basically that works by the inheritance and all of that weird stuff, blah, 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 blah. But you need to say Android.intent.action.web-search. What that means is basically Android is obviously the device. .intent. Intent is like, what do you intend to do? What are you trying to do or whatever. Action, almost the same kind of as intention. I don't really exactly understand why they use those. But the action in this case is the web search, which is the final thing. So we're basically telling it, okay, we want to do a web search. What kind of web search do we want to do? We call it a query, which basically is a question. We're trying to, or a query basically means we're trying to get a response. We're putting something into a box and we're expecting to get a response back from the internet. That's essentially what a query is. So we put a result in, we're expecting to get a result back out. And the result in our case is a bunch of links taking us to a bunch of different websites that can answer a question. Extra value. Extra value is literally just like it has here. It's the question. What are we trying to answer? So that's the stuff that would ultimately go in the text field for your browser. You'd put this in here. That's the question you're asking. That's what would go in the text field. And then we say start activity. So what the start activity does, then it pulls up the internet tab. It posts the question inside of the box and then searches for your answer to your question, whatever it may be. And that's essentially all there is to it. That is essentially how the activity starter works. Activity starter can be used for a lot of other crazy things, but I used it for this app to do what it has to do. Obviously, the other side of the coin, if you hit the no button, just make the 2 buttons invisible again and then ask another question. So, I mean, that's fairly simple and straightforward to understand. But literally, yeah, that's all there is to this application to make it work the way I had it working. So, as always, if you guys have any questions, please leave a comment below. I will answer your question as soon as I can and to the best of my ability. If you guys are interested in getting this software or something to work with it, if you can't get yours built and working by yourself, please feel free to ask me for this the software code, and I will definitely download it. I can do that with any of my past programs. I can build them up and then download them off and and post them somewhere if you guys need access to them or you're having a hard time getting something to work. I have no problems doing that for you guys. But as always, that's all I have for you guys for this time. Please stay tuned for our next tutorial. I have gotten requests to show you guys how to access like your Facebook page from a web page. I am working on that stuff. There's a lot of weird, crazy stuff that you got to do to make stuff like that happen. So I am working on it. I will try to get that up in a future tutorial, but it's an as I get to it basis kind of thing. So please like, comment, subscribe, donate to my channel. You can find my donation link on the About section in my channel page if you're interested in donating. Any money you do donate will go straight to funding and making my channel better. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in my next AppInventor tutorial.